Wicked 2 is not what you imagine. New details of its story have been revealed. What would you think if I told you that the story we know could be completely different? Perhaps Dorothy's story was not just a journey to defeat the Wicked Witch of the West, but a tool for Glinda to become the new Wizard of Oz. Or will she be a dictator in this magical world? What would you think if I told you that the story is very different from what you thought it was, and that the invisible threads of Glinda's manipulations and the Wizard of Oz have been in the story from the beginning? In this video, we'll be talking about the new developments in Wicked 2 and how Glinda may have manipulated Dorothy to take down the one who was once her friend. But perhaps the story has not come to an end yet. And for more videos of news and theories of your favorite series and movies, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Welcome to the Oasis Geek. The story of Wicked begins just as Dorothy's adventure in the world of Oz begins, with the death of a terrible witch and the celebration of a town. In the case of Wicked, the story begins with the celebration of the death of Elphaba because of the girl Dorothy. But in the Dorothy movie, the celebration that occurs when the girl arrives at this place is for the death of the Witch of the South. By the end of the first Wizard of Oz movie, this mad scientist escapes in his hot air balloon to return to Kansas, and it seems that Glinda is now the one in control of everything that happens in the world. But now that we know new information thanks to Wicked's story, perhaps Dorothy's story happened in a different way. During Dorothy's story, it is the Wizard of Oz who asks her to finish off the Green Witch, and Glinda remains a bystander. It would seem that everyone in Oz was afraid of Elphaba, or perhaps something else was going on. Perhaps the answer to this could be found in Elphaba's death in the Wizard of Oz movie. Here we see how after the witch sets the scarecrow on fire, Dorothy tries to put out the fire with water, and the water melts her. Being that her sister died because a box fell on her, it is somewhat illogical to think that with a bit of water, Elphaba would lose her life. I think there is something else going on here. If we go to the possible explanations of why the witch would lose her life with water, it is mentioned in some books and movies that the reason is that the witch was so dry that when water fell on her, she melted. However, it is suggested that this condition existed even before the arrival of the Wizard of Oz in that world. Now, with what we know thanks to Wicked, we can affirm that this theory is not true. Therefore, something else must have happened at that time. Instead of melting, perhaps the witch simply disappeared and reappeared somewhere else. What if the witch actually faked her death to escape the influence of the Wizard of Oz? Or what if this is exactly what Elphaba wanted in order to confront her old friend later on? This adaptation of Wicked seems to be more focused on the relationship between Glinda and Elphaba, and everything points to the fact that a confrontation between the two will be inevitable. This also leads us to consider that perhaps what really happened is that Elphaba faked her death in order to disappear. Perhaps she was acting as the villain of the story on purpose, with the intention of being attacked. So, when the perfect excuse presented itself, a bit of water that supposedly melted her, everyone thought she had died, and they stopped looking for her. After all, the Wizard of Oz was sending people to take down the Green Witch, as he feared she would reveal the truth. He was never a wizard, but merely a con man who controlled a city. Moreover, he was using her for his own purposes, such as trying to give abilities to other animals. Another clue that points to Glinda's desire for Dorothy to finish off Elphaba is that she didn't tell her how to escape from the world until after Dorothy defeated the witch. It was in Glinda's best interest for Dorothy to remain in this place, since not only was Elphaba eliminated, but also the Wizard of Oz had escaped to Kansas. This is one reason why Wicked 2 might be different from the books. The Wizard of Oz probably thought that with Elphaba out of the picture, he could return to the real world and take control of Kansas. With the magical knowledge he possesses, he could become a threat to the real world. Perhaps the story we will see in this second installment will be very different, and Elphaba's story is not yet concluded. Although, of course, there is always the possibility that the movie will follow the events of the books and the musical more closely, staying within the already established canon. However, in my opinion, I think the second film will introduce significant changes. But what do we really know about the second film? The website, The Guardian, revealed important information about this movie, saying the following. While Part 1 functions mostly as prequel, taking place before a misunderstood Elphaba becomes the Wicked Witch of the West, Part 2 is more revisionist fable, playing out in parallel to the events of L. Frank Baum's 1900 novel and the classic 1939 film adaptation. Elphaba exits the Emerald City in both exile and triumph, having summoned her full powers and learned the hideous truth of the wizards and Madame Morrible's embrace of fascism at the expense of vulnerable scapegoats. The musical, at turns saccharine and impassioned, is not subtle on the politics, and neither is Chu's movie. Part 2, assuming Chu once again remains faithful to the musical's plot itself, loosely based on the novel by Gregory Maguire, picks up some time later, when something bad has fully manifested in Oz, with a much swifter timeline as well as origin stories for the Lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow. If Part 1 is about choices, Part 2 is about consequences, Chu told Entertainment Weekly. Choices are difficult to make. But when you do make those choices, sometimes the result isn't what you expect it to be. It can be lonely. It can be hard. And those choices have become 8 times more relevant in the context of recent political and social events. Chu teased to Variety, calling Part 2, at least thematically, a doozy. This means that after Elphaba's apparent death at the end of The Wizard of Oz, she may have actually confronted the Wizard of Oz when he tried to escape in his hot air balloon. Perhaps the whole thing was a trap set by Glinda and Elphaba to force the wizard to leave his castle. Although on the other hand, there is also the possibility that the story will remain more faithful to the books. It is also likely that we will see how Glinda becomes the new Wizard of Oz, after making all the threats in this world disappear. But what do you think about all this? Do you think we will see a confrontation between Elphaba and Glinda in the second movie? Will Glinda remain a bystander so that Dorothy can end the witch's life, so she can take control of the Emerald City? Is Glinda really behind everything that happens? Share your opinion in the comments. And for more videos of your favorite series and movies, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. You are on The Oasis Geek.